The reason I'm bothering to do this is I keep hearing on the press Biden's going to raise your taxes. Anybody making less than $400,000 a year will not pay a single penny in taxes.
I'm a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional. I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA.
He says his grandfather could not read or write, but the records indicate that his great-grandfather and his great-great-grandfather could read and write. So those were inconsistencies there.
Men tend to be stronger in many sports. I mean, their serves in tennis are faster. They run faster. But if it's not testosterone that makes the difference, what is it?
Remember, if we're talking about trans girls in girls' sport, then we have to talk about the difference between trans girls and cisgender girls, not boys and girls.
Yes, those are two totally different things, as you know. Correct. A girl and a trans girl is not the same as a girl and a boy.
Nope.
Correct?
Correct.
Would you like to say grace as we begin the show, Alice, or would you like to get right into it?
So on that note, because I'm in trouble, I've been booted off.
That is not true.
I've been booted off of the Burn Barrel podcast and relegated to my own podcast, which is a project you'll be hearing about shortly. But safe to say that those of you that have purchased 1570 Project merchandise are ahead of the curve. But that's an announcement that will be coming in the next week or so. We'll talk about that later. But if you would like more insights from me and you're upset at Tom cutting me off and
I don't know. I didn't know how long the liturgy was going to be necessarily, Alice, as you rolled your era of theification of the show forward.
So if you like more from me and less interruptions from Tom into my insights, then the podcast for you is coming.
Are you going to have minarets too? And is in the sound of every 5 o'clock in the morning?
And all listeners must be constantly veiled. Yes.
5 o'clock in the morning. Yes. Point your prayer rugs towards Mecca and expect every
point your prayer rugs towards the Burn Barrel. The spin-off podcast is coming, wherein I will not be forced to hide my true self.
I'm just glad that you kept it. You kept your teachings in English, at least, Ellis, there for a moment. But you have not been kicked off the Burn Barrel podcast. You were expanding the Burn Barrel universe with an Alice Shattuck project that is very close to being rolled out. Perhaps a soft opening very shortly?
Soft opening shortly, yes.
And at which point you won't be browbeat into quitting. I
will be running this show.
Yes.
I will learn how to run the board beforehand, so don't.
This is an Alice Shattuck joint that you're having here.
Yeah.
So this is like beginning the new world because of religious oppression.
I'm going to be freed. I'm going to be like the Puritans, freeing religious oppression in England to form a new land.
With your own religious oppression in the new land. Poor Mary Dyer.
But no, more coming on that in the coming days. I don't want to say too much, but yes, I'm fleeing the religious oppression of the Burn Barrel podcast.
And you know what the great thing is, Alice? Is that you can fortify that with all the lights and buzzers you want to and all the platforms you want to. And we can also expand the Burn Barrel as well and up our budgets because we're not paying any taxes. As a matter of fact, most of you listening right now, almost all of you, I would say.
I think most people who listen to the Burn Barrel are in this category.
Make under $400,000 a year, where President Biden has deemed that you are free and clear for the foreseeable future.
The reason I'm bothering to do this is I keep hearing on the press Biden's going to raise your taxes. Anybody making less than $400,000 a year will not pay a single penny in taxes.
Man.
And we will not increase the deficit either.
I got to say, I am shocked that this
I'm
guy
all for Biden now.
is an aggressive conservative.
I stand corrected on Joe Biden. I am pro-Biden.
I thought there were dangerous tax cuts under Trump, but apparently those are gone now. Zero taxes.
I love it. I love it. Zero taxes.
Is that the Biden's comms team? They're so focused on just getting him the hell out of the room that they're not going to flag him and say, "Oh, sir, just just clean that up for a second. They're not going to, no. They're, okay, just let him say what he says.
Well, who knows what he'll say if they try and get him to correct it.
He could call the betting field fat or a horse face. Or not horse face, that's Trump.
Dog face, pony soldier.
Oh, yeah, a horse's tail.
Which is better, to be called a horse face or a horse's tail?
I don't know. I think that I don't know, because Biden, horse's tail for Biden was a serious, not admonishment. It was a serious, what would you call it? Not an insult.
Imprecation?
Ooh, I like that, Alice. That was reserved for bigots and homophobes.
A lot of you are very successful businessmen and women. If you were at a fancy restaurant in Washington 5-6 years ago at an important business meeting, and a gay or lesbian waiter came up, or transgender, spoke with a lisp or demonstrated they were gay or lesbian, and someone at that...
As they do, maybe pranced over to the table, perhaps a leather boa, and I love how trans is right in there.
Yeah, and well, so he gave us some examples for being gay, of how you would demonstrate that you're gay or lesbian, like a lisp, but how do you demonstrate that you're a lesbian while waiting on the table?
Wallet with a chain, rolled up jeans, Doc Martens, white t-shirt, military Elvis haircut. Maybe that does it. I don't know. I don't know how you show that you're trans unless it's very obvious. I don't know. I don't go to the restaurants he goes to.
Apparently.
Luncheon table made fun of that person. No one would have said anything. Not a joke. I want you to literally think about this.
Literally.
Today, if that same thing happened, the other 4 or 5 people at the table say, "You horse's tail, get out of here." Really?
Man, he is so in touch.
I know. Today, people call people horses' tails all the time.
Exactly.
Your Himalayan salt rocks are not on, by the way.
Oh, goodness, thank
you.
You
let me go through a whole episode with my little bubble lights you gave me off the other day.
Is that true?
Too. It is. It's true.
I'm sorry about that. Well, you're such a theologian now. You've got a halo around you naturally, Alice. So
you couldn't notice.
No, I couldn't notice.
Okay, wow.
Horse's tail. So there you go. $400,000. It's nice to be able to keep your money. That is Joe Biden, who is absolutely in
zero taxes.
Mm-hmm. So let's get to this gay, transgender, and we're not. I want to talk about this because I was really blown away. I gotta grab the Jenner thing from yesterday. So this is off of, and this is just shows you the media in 2021 that we're for 2 days in a row heavily relying on TMZ because they're better than most of the national media.
Yeah, because they want stories.
Right. Well, and also. Paparazzi reporting is reporting. It's on the streets. It's going through trash.
Well, yeah, that's how you get original content is you have to go out there. You can't just watch Tucker Carlson and then diss him for your entire show. That's not actually reporting.
Right. So here's Caitlyn Jenner. We played this yesterday, and we're going to take this issue on straight on. We're not going to be horse's tails about this, Alice.
Okay.
Right? Here's Caitlyn Jenner. This is what we played yesterday with the TMZ trans guys and girls sports question.
Hi, Caitlyn. So there's legislation in various states to ban biological boys who are trans from playing girls sports in school. What's your opinion on that?
This is a question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls sports in school. It just isn't fair. And we have to protect girls sports in our school.
But if someone transitions and now identifies as a girl, isn't it delegitimizing their identity to prevent
them? Have a good
day. I love that. Okay, so for today, Harvey Levin of TMZ had somebody named Dr. Veronica Ivy on. Dr. Veronica Ivy is a trans doctor. I don't know. I assume that means that he was a biological man who is now a woman, because the trend I see is that men, when they become trans or change, when men start doing affectations of females, dressing like women and changing their lives to be like women, they tend to, in many cases, adopt these over-the-top burlesque names.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not, Dr. Shanine King. She's, or he's, whatever, Dr. Veronica Ivy. Of course it's Veronica Ivy. It's always going to be Veronica Ivy. It's not going to be, anything any less fabulous than that. Alice?
I'm looking up Veronica
Don't look
Ivy,
up Veronica Ivy.
who was previously Rachel McKinnon.
Oh, cool. So she's a guy. What?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out because...
No, but she's a woman. She dresses as a woman in this thing.
Okay, but... So Rachel McKinnon is also a cyclist who has won women's cycling competitions.
So is that who Dr. Veronica Ivy is?
Apparently.
Because this Dr.
According
Veronica...
to Twitter, they're the same person, but I'm confused.
This Dr. Veronica Ivy is a...
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, I mean an MD, I believe.
Yeah. In 2018, she became the first transgender world cycling champion by placing first at the Women's Masters Track World Championship for the women's 35 to 44 age bracket.
So is this a man?
Yes.
Okay. Who is now a woman, and that's why she's Veronica Ivy. But she was Kate McKinnon.
Rachel McKinnon, apparently.
So we're just changing names.
I guess so.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. But this now person is a medical doctor.
A PhD.
Okay. That's great that they're having this person on, a PhD, to talk about the physiological, impacts of doping with testosterone.
Her primary research is the focus of the philosophy of language. The majority of her published work is about the norms of the speech act of assertion. Preeminently, her 2015 monograph, The Norms of Assertion, Truth, Lies, and Warrant.
Okay, so this is horse bleep.
Another focus of her work is feminism and feminist philosophy, particularly issues relating to gender and queer identities.
Okay.
So doctor is a loose term here.
Okay, good. Okay, here we go. So listen to these two cuts.
Okay.
There was another one that I just dropped because it was all about testosterone, and this Veronica Ivy letting us know that, in fact, testosterone levels don't affect performance. So, which is really a straw man argument that I don't feel is the argument, but it's one that I've heard more trans people, trans girls and guys and girls sports people go to, whatever. But okay, so this is the first question and answer.
Men tend to be stronger in many sports. I mean, their serves in tennis are faster. They run faster, hammer throws longer. So there's some data, it seems, to show that there is a difference. But if it's not testosterone that makes the difference, what is it?
If it's not testosterone, what is it? And remember, we're not being horse's tails here. Harvey Levin is a gay man.
Okay.
Dr. Veronica Ivy is a biological man who is now living the life of a woman. Okay.
And who has no dog in the fight as a competitive world champion cyclist in the trans sports debate, I would say.
Here we go. Why are all the men winning the sports?
Yeah, so I have two things to say about this. The first is, remember, if we're talking about trans girls in girls' sport, then we have to talk about the difference between trans girls and cisgender girls, not boys and girls.
Now, hold on. First of all, why do we have to talk about it the way that Dr. Ivy wants us to? Why do we have a set of rules of how we're not allowed to discuss this as being boy versus girl? But this is, in fact, what?
Trans girls versus girls. And one of the reasons...
Wait. What is a trans girl?
A boy.
Okay, so this is boy. So we can't say it's boy versus girl. We can only say it's trans. Okay, which in a trans person is... A trans biological male is now not the same as a boy.
Right. And so, well, there's a degree of nuance to this, okay? Because...
yeah, I would say so.
Okay, but I want to be fair to the argument at hand, which is that, when these young men, if they are on puberty blockers through puberty, they never go through male puberty. They take estrogen in order to go through a female puberty. Then we know for a fact scientifically that some of those sport advantages disappear.
Not all of those are criteria to be in any of these sports.
Right. So, exactly. So this is the problem, is that none of these are criteria to be in these sports, and that effectively any policing at all of anything is considered transphobic. And not only that, but the measures that places are taking, so like the IOCC, the Olympic people, their rules have to do with, you know, you've been on testosterone, you've been on, you know, estrogen treatments for a certain amount of time, so your testosterone levels are below a certain amount. Those don't necessarily cut it either, because if you've gone through male puberty and if you've had testosterone coursing through your veins for a certain number of decades of your life, it changes your body physically in ways that can be measured in terms of bone density, in terms of strength. So when you have people, and this is what what's-his-face Joe Rogan got in trouble for, was talking about Fallon Fox, who was absolutely a man that went through male puberty, who then decided to be trans, got surgery, and lied about it, pretended to be a biological woman, and beat up a bunch of women in the MMA, saying that Fallon Fox was a biological woman, which was not true. So, and clearly had advantages because of having been living life as a man through most of her life. So some of these changes, you know, can be mitigated if you have not exposed your body to enough testosterone over the course of your life. How much of it can be mitigated? I don't know. You know, some stuff is clearly innate. Some has to do with testosterone or androgen exposure in the womb. I mean, like, this stuff, it's not cut and dried. And in my opinion, when it's not cut and dried, we have a category that's for everybody to compete in. Everybody can compete in the men's category. Anyone. Women. If women can beat men, then they can be in the men's category too. That's fine. Go for it. If a woman can be in the NBA or the NFL and she can compete, then great. That's awesome. All the women and all the trans people can all compete in the men's sports category. That's the everybody category. I'm sure if a woman were an awesome football player, the NFL team would turn her down. Why would they? If she were going to be an asset to the team.
Sure.
So we have a category that's for everybody to compete in. The women's sports category should just be for people that are clearly, obviously, 100% have been female since they were born the entire time and have not made any changes. Like, that's my opinion. But
you're feeling a lot of horse's tail talk going to be happening in the 15-17 project.
Okay, so the horse's tail.
But the thing is, Elsa, we're seeing, when we see these high-profile cases here where the men are setting all the records running as women.
Right.
The eyes don't lie.
Right.
Big, brawny dudes are going in there who have bigger muscles, bigger bone density.
Including Veronica Ivy, a.k.a. Rachel McKinnon.
Bigger organs, a much bigger lung capacity. A male is just much better equipped at almost every sport.
Yeah.
To be the best. And this is just logic. The fact that we have to say it. You know, it's so obviously true that you would have to make that it cannot be debated. So you would have to make saying it verboten,
right? And then the
punishable
argument,
by cancellation and whatever.
And then make specious arguments, like to say, like, well, lots of men have natural advantages over other men in sports too. You're never going to be able to beat LeBron James, Tom Shattuck, even though you're a guy. You know, which is obviously true. LeBron James obviously had some physical advantages over you in playing a sport, despite the fact that you're both men. But we have women's sports for a reason. That, you know, and I challenge anybody.
But in the NBA, if LeBron James is the best man in the NBA,
right,
the worst player in the NBA is better than the best player in the WNBA.
Right, obviously, because otherwise there would be women playing in the NBA.
Right.
And there are not.
Correct. Wow. Dr. Veronica Ivory, let's continue.
If we want to talk about women, then we have to talk about trans women compared to cis women, not men compared to women.
Man, you hear the anger there? Totally different thing. Unrelated. A trans woman is a totally different thing than a man. Totally different thing. You know, it's not. It's like comparing a trout to a camel. The totally different thing. It's not the same. I mean, have to begin your argument on that premise, which has no foundational integrity whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, that is coming from a place of bull bleep, a grand, loud place of bull bleep.
The second part of your question was about, like, well, you know, what is it? What produces this performance difference that we do see between men and women? There is a performance difference. They are faster on the track.
Oh, is there? Yes.
I don't know that anybody's contended that.
Dr.
In the history
Ivory.
of planet Earth.
Ivy Harvey.
I cannot keep up with them. That is the truth.
Wait a second. You can't keep up with them?
Well, yeah.
Okay. But you are better at keeping up with them.
Neither can Tom.
Right, but he is better at keeping up with them than most women are. Right?
I would say so.
Because he is one.
A world champion cyclist, yes, in the women's category, but not in the men's category.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So
okay.
better than most women, but not better than virtually any men.
Well, the truth is we don't know.
The thing is that this is to say that for Dr. Ivy Harvey, whatever, Veronica Ivy, to say that is to begin a debate, an argument with a grand distortion.
Right.
And then add more of them. Like, I couldn't even beat them. I'm a woman, too. I couldn't beat these men. Okay.
Yeah, that's not an argument for
No.
you to compete in women's sports. As I said, Tom Shattuck can't beat most male track stars either, but that's not an argument for why you should be allowed to compete with the women.
Yep, right. But it's all... It's like... You know,
you're starting the argument with a false premise and then moving on from there.
To other false stuff, like anecdotes about I couldn't beat them either. I'm just an ordinary built petite woman too. I couldn't beat them either. No, you're not. You're adding factors in here, and this is a zero credibility debate unless you don't build an argument from the orthodox way in which you would, unless you start from what's right in human rights. Starting from the back door and say, no, this is about, first of all, equal justice and human rights. So start with that.
Right. Or like what the TMZ reporter asked Caitlyn Jenner, is this about you're delegitimizing their identities? If you're starting from we need to make everybody feel good about their personal identity, then you're going to have a different conversation about sports. If the purpose of sports is to legitimize people's identities, then your conversation is going to be different than if your purpose in sports is to determine who's the best athlete at something.
Okay, let me keep this going.
Oh, we do know now, finally, after all these years, that it isn't as simple as testosterone, as natural testosterone.
We never said it was.
Yeah, no,
That's
only you were saying that.
Yes, we do. No. So you see, I do bring credibility because we've come to a new... we've come to a new development in the story here because we're just working with the science. Like, yeah, fine. That you can talk about that or hair color too if you want. We're just saying that the guys are better than the girls at stuff.
Yeah, and we're not 100% sure why, but maybe we should keep things the way they are until we know for sure.
Testosterone, oral health, whatever you want, you can add into it. Until then, I'm already at my conclusion. I've got it. It's simply naturally true that through an experience of being alive that I've made I've deduced, along with everybody else, that men are better at some things. And that's fine.
Yeah. And women are better at some other things.
Correct. Exactly. There's a reason we're all here. And we continue not to wipe each other out. People have...
That is not the reason. There are elite world championship level men with natural testosterone below the women's average, and they are competing at no disadvantage to men with 100 times as much testosterone.
So that's great, and you can use that in your debate with those people on the other side of that issue. That has nothing to do with you needing to be on my daughter's track team.
So there are certainly maybe some biological reasons for...
Possibly. Now, this part is the stretch. There may be...
Hypothetically, we're not really...
Could be some biological reasons. I mean, that's really pie-in-the-sky thinking. The other stuff, it could be, though. I mean, we'll give you that.
For men, on average, being bigger, stronger, faster than women. But we do know that there are also social reasons. So we encourage boys... We give them sports toys as presents versus girls not getting sports toys as often. We encourage boys to climb trees, and we discourage girls because it's too dangerous.
Boys to climb trees.
That's why boys are better at sports, honey, is we haven't encouraged girls to climb trees.
We encourage boys to get buff, and we say girls are going to be too manly if they have muscles. All of these social effects have performance difference effects on men and women that we don't know how big that difference is due to those social effects.
I think we have been encouraging girls to do sports for decades.
Right.
As a matter of fact, there's systemic encouragement for girls to do sports.
Mm-hmm. And to be strong
right.
and to achieve stuff and everything else. And any parent of kids can tell you that while there are certainly boys that are less good at sports and girls that are more good at sports, that the difference between, say, like the 5-year-old boys soccer team and the 5-year-old girls soccer team is profound.
Yes. Yes. And actually, it's interesting.
Even among the most liberal, gender-inclusive communities, including some of which we've lived in, that remains true even in those towns. And
now, and this is different than when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, you wouldn't. In 1983, there weren't girls on the baseball team.
Right.
And there wasn't girls softball, I don't think, in my town. I don't think
really
back then. Girls played softball, but it was. I don't remember there. It was, if there was, it was not integrated. But I mean, gender-wise, we were fully integrated race-wise.
Well done, honey.
Right.
Keep digging.
But now everybody, we've got a daughter. She plays basketball. She's played basketball. Today we're about to, when we're done with this, she and I are going to softball, a game tonight. And she's played soccer. The girls, especially in suburbs, kids play everything now.
Right.
Even more than they did when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Kids play everything. We've got boys. Everybody plays everything now.
And especially with, Title IX in colleges, girls are very much encouraged to play sports because in a lot of cases, for a lot of girls, the sports pay for their college. Because if you're...
That's the systemic encouragement.
Right. So if you're good at, but to make it more explicit, I mean, colleges are really looking for girls because they have these big programs that bring in all this money on the boys' sports side, all this NCAA stuff, and they need to spend the same amount on girls' programs under Title IX. So they're looking for female athletes and offer them great incentives. So sports for a lot of young women pays for their college. So, I mean, parents, especially in affluent communities where parents are definitely planning on sending all their kids to college. In a lot of cases, for girls, that's their ticket to great scholarships.
Yeah.
So there's huge encouragement for women in sports, women in crew, women's rugby, women's gymnastics, field hockey paid for my sister's college. It's a big thing.
And there are, it's funny, and this is, I guess, kind of an aside, but there are interesting differences. I was talking to the coach the other night as we were watching the girls hit and field.
Right.
A few times the girls would hit a little dribbler to go right in front of the mound. If this was the boys' team, every boy, including the outfielders, would sprint in and pile on to try to get that ball, even though we were trying to say, no, one person call it, whatever. And the girls were very organized about it. Only the two girls were close engaged, and, one girl went ahead and got it.
Right.
So isn't that interesting, the natural organizational differences? Because the boys are, stupid jackals in a pack, just ripping the piece of meat apart with no thought to what happens afterwards. The idea is that I'm going to need to get up, take this, and throw it over there. But naturally, the girls were organized. And I think it's kind of funny. And also, obviously, with girls' sports, it's as long as everybody's on an equal field, as long as everybody's the same gender, the sports can be very competitive and very fun to watch.
Right.
It's the same thing. A good game is a good game, regardless of who's playing it. Okay, back to question 2 from Harvey Levin to Dr. Veronica Ivy.
Are we even asking the right questions here? Because this has been really difficult to understand. It sounds like we're not even on the right playing field.
You're not. So what you should be asking is that...
What you should be asking are the things I want you to ask. Enter my realm of distorted, odd, illogical thinking, Harvey, where everything that I say makes complete sense, even though it's asymmetrical and based on no facts whatsoever. Sure, there could be physical differences. Yep, thank you. That's my world, Harvey. That's the one we want to play in, where my crazy construct is the norm, and the outliers are things like, yeah, there could be a shot that boys are built differently than girls. That's what they're demanding. No, change your argument. Change the way we talk about it so it fits me.
Inclusion is the default. And
so I'll start that again. Because here we go. Inclusion is the default. There you go.
Are we even asking the right questions here? Because this has been really difficult to understand. It sounds like we're not even on the right playing field.
You're
here.
not. So what you should be asking is that inclusion is the default and that sport is.
So yes, you can be on the team first. We're going to start with a yes. Go ahead. And then, even though it's a competitive sport, and then we'll consider fairness, integrity of the game, the general rules, meritocracy. We'll consider all that stuff later. Inclusion is the default. This is about being inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a huge thing. Remember, trans people are human people. Trans rights are human rights. Okay? So that's how we'll start. And that's why everything else has to be pushed aside in this spirit of these notions, and if inclusion means that when it comes time to getting a scholarship for track, your daughter is not involved in the inclusion process of the college that drafts because they're going to be drafting Dr. Veronica Ivy instead, well then that's fine, because if not, it's violence against a group of people, and that's it. Right. So in the name of inclusion, girls have to be excluded. I mean, how do you argue with something like this? Which is why they know how thin their argument is, which is why they're all fire and fangs constantly. You will be destroyed. We'll hunt you down to take away your morning show and make sure you can never work again. Get you off the Substack if you dare even say any of this stuff.
Oh yeah, no. This is the new religious orthodoxy of the left, is that you absolutely have to believe that kids who are born boys playing women's sports is 100% fine, or you're excommunicated from the Church of Inclusion. You're done. You can't publish anything. You can't talk to people. Maybe we'll let you continue to have your job flipping burgers at McDonald's, but probably not. You're probably out of that too. You had better prepare yourself for a life in the wilderness if you think anything other than the absolute 100% orthodoxy on this. And it's interesting to me because when McKinnon or Veronica Ivy here says that this isn't about boys versus girls, it's about trans girls versus girls, and you said there's some of them are just boys. Like that is the obvious next step, is they're going to use examples of, people that have been on blockers and been on estrogen for many, many years and don't have testosterone differences that are that big and all that stuff. But it's a wedge to get in everybody else, so that anybody who declared that they were a woman this week and have only been on blockers for, the last few days, that they can also play girls sports, because why not? Because if you're including one person, why not another? And you can't gatekeep trans identities and all these other things, until you're including people that don't want to go on blockers at all and are just guys who are just saying they're trans so that they can, get a college scholarship or whatever.
Gatekeeping is not allowing somebody the identification that they want.
Right. So you can basically, people get upset when people say like, oh, well, you don't have to people will say like, you don't have to transition to be trans. You don't have to actually experience any gender dysphoria to really be trans. You don't have to get, a bottom surgery done to be trans, or top surgery done to be trans. You can really, we don't want to gatekeep the identity. If you say you're trans, you're trans. If you say you're non-binary, like which category should the non-binary kids play in, by the way? What if you don't want to go on hormone treatments, but you say you're trans? We don't want to gatekeep. You don't want to tell people they're not trans just because they say they're trans. So, I mean, really what you're looking at, ultimately what we're pushing for here is the end of girls' sports. And just because they're not explicitly saying that yet doesn't mean that's not ultimately going to be what the argument is. It's the Rod Dreher law of merited impossibility. That will never happen. And when it does, you bigots will deserve it, right?
So it's a human right. And that is how the International Olympic Committee puts it. They say that participation in competitive sport is a human right. And so
It's a human right.
Mm-hmm. I believe the men's category is also a competitive sport. So
right.
if you need to participate for your human rights, you can head over that way, and the men's practice is over there.
You remind me of going online with a debate about college forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did a little video yesterday about Dunkin' Donuts saying that you could get rid of college loan debt by going to Dunkin' Donuts and getting a job and paying for college. Or you could also get a job right after high school, work hard, sock some money away, and pay for college and do it that way. Pay for a piecemeal and piece by piece, as you go and work. And that way you'd be way ahead of the game and just get some loans or even no loans, depending on what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And the pushback was, no, you don't understand how hard it is to pay this stuff off and what it costs here and there, and like I'm going to be worked till I'm 684. So the problem is not that you can't pay for the college, is that you want to go big, you want it all, and you want it now.
Right.
That's it. Mm-hmm. So you get to have it now, and that's the thought is no. I don't want to just go to college. I want to go to the most fun, awesomest place in the world with the biggest price tag that I don't have to be responsible for, and I want to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I deserve that. The entitlement is incredible, and I deserve that. And people yelling at me saying, "Oh, I can't believe that you're a jerk. You don't know what that does to people." No, you're not. Nobody's doing anything to you. You could drop out right now and start saving money and do it right like you'd buy anything else. I had to get a lawyer to fight off a huge credit card company because when I was 25, I loved having a credit card, and man, I went out in the town and went on trips, and it was great. Then I was at a point where I couldn't catch up anymore, and then they was dinging my credit.
So you liked using the credit card more than you enjoyed making payments to the credit
Right,
card.
that's really fun. The front end of that is very fun. Never occurred to me that I could say to the rest of the taxpayers, this was really hard to pay. I just wanted it all, and I wanted it now, night after night. And now it's too expensive. So you all owe me. Mm-hmm. It's just the audacity.
And that's not a baseless comparison because, credit cards, mortgages, car loans, all kinds of things. Other people who went to college have made choices wherein they paid off college loans before they paid off those other things. So if you're going to hand $50,000 in debt relief to people with a lot of college loans, you have to consider the other people that maybe paid off $50,000 in college loans and have other debts now because they made the choice to pay off their loans.
Absolutely. And there's other people who never went to college who I believe should be entitled to some kind of relief for the other things in life because they're now out in life with no free college and no free advantage of having gone to college.
Right.
So let me play the rest. And that's what I forgot how I was comparing that, but that's what it is. It's like, no, we're going in. We want to be able to be in the team we want to. We want to do it now. We want it all. And that's where the conversation is.
Inclusion has to be the default, and you have to have tons of evidence to justify excluding people, and that evidence does not exist.
You have to have tons of evidence to justify excluding people. The evidence doesn't exist, says this person. That is a fabrication. And the fact that the onus would be, and that the audacity of the move, the onus would be on us having to prove that a man is different. You have to prove that the man is different, the man's abilities are different, the physical abilities are different, because the evidence just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It exists everywhere. It's always existed.
Right.
As cultures and civilizations forever.
Yeah, it so much exists that everybody has always known it until right now. And now to be demanded to ask to prove something that everybody has always known because you want to do something completely different is, the burden should be on you.
It's all based on assumption, and it's all based on comparing boys to girls or men to women, when that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about trans girls versus cis girls, trans women versus cis women.
That's convenient, too, because this is a relatively new problem in society, so there isn't as much data on it because we have not always had tons of trans girls competing in high school sports. This is a pretty new phenomenon. So we don't have as much long-term data on how trans girls do relative to cis girls over time. What we do have is a lot of evidence on how boys do in sports relative to girls over long periods of time. That we know. So it's convenient when the data can't be found to show what they don't want to know, because we haven't actually studied this issue that much yet, because it's a completely new issue. But some of us might say that there are possibly enough similarities between trans girls and boys so that we could draw some conclusions from the limited data we have about boys' sports and girls' sports.
So, so that's where we are with that. And once again, neither of us are trying to be horses' tails. As far as I'm concerned, do what you want to do. If you want to be trans, God bless, fine, that's great. As it is right now, the onus is on you to explain to me how it's okay that you are throwing 98-mile-per-hour fastballs at a girls' baseball game, and the second, closest fastball is 63 miles per hour, or whatever it is. Because that's not fair, and that's mean, okay?
Right.
And that's not inclusion, that's exclusion. And that is needing to use a very niche, small issue to destroy something that's a positive thing for girls right now. And we're supposed to, as a society, we're supposed to value women. But once again, in the name of progressivism, crazy, aggressive progressivism, the first casualties are always women and children. And then, of course, minorities, marginalized people. And the people who are, powerful white middle and upper class progressives who have houses on Martha's Vineyard and love their lifestyles, they'll sign whatever, they'll do whatever corporate morality woke statement, whatever it takes to keep themselves on top, to maintain their affluent positions. They'll sign on to it, whatever, because they know to put their head down, because they're living a good life.
Yeah, they didn't get to where they are by not going with the social trends of the moment. They're 100% on board with every little thing. I agree 100%. I have breaking news.
What?
Bill and Melinda Gates are getting divorced.
Oh.
Do you not have that breaking news?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
After a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we've made the decision to end our marriage. Over the last 27 years, we've raised 3 incredible children and built a foundation that works all over the world, et cetera, et cetera. They ask for space and privacy as they begin to navigate their new life. So, I don't know. Is Melinda Gates going to beat, what was Jeff Bezos' wife's name?
I don't remember.
But she got like the biggest divorce settlement ever. So, Melinda Gates might be heading there to join that exclusive club of
I don't know. I mean,
billionaires by divorce.
But you know what? I have no problem with. I mean, he irks me because he's a quintillionaire and he's got so much leisure. But at least he's trying to. The Gates Foundation has done some really good things, and fine. And though I get nauseous anytime I see an Internet Explorer icon anywhere in my life. He's fine. He's done some good things. The whole story of how he, reverse engineered the whole backstabby way those guys grew success and Microsoft and all those companies and Jobs did the same thing and this and that interests me, and good luck to them, Alice. I'm not, I'm learning from the 1570 Project that, it doesn't, I don't need to cast aspersions or hope for distance and division among people. I don't care about that. But I do care about okay, this is related to what we just did. In a continuing narrative of we've gone effing insane, and there is no institution that is immune to it. There is no institution that is immune to the insanity. This is a commercial for the Central Intelligence Agency featuring a 30-something-year-old woman.
When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Sora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made. I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration, a woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences.
So, this is an ad for somebody, the CIA.
The CIA, yes.
She seems like a lovely person.
The premier spy agency of the United States.
Right. These are the people who do this stuff in other countries. Mm-hmm. These are our best and brightest.
Suggesting that a question has been asked. I did not sneak into CIA. My employment was not and is not the result of a fluke or slip through the cracks. I earned my way in, and I earned my way up the ranks of this organization. I am educated, qualified, and competent, and sometimes I struggle. I struggle feeling like I could do more, be more to my two sons, and I struggle leaving the office when I feel there's so much more to do. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas.
Is this an Oscar-winning speech? Did she just win an Oscar? This sounds like, the self-aggrandizing in here is like, geez, congratulate yourself a little bit more. Mm-hmm. God, I refuse to. I'm standing up. I am not a fluke. I am powerful. Work this out with your shrink or the mirror or support group somewhere. How is this attractive to people? So you know what?
Well, I think it's attractive to certain people, which I think is the point, right? That the CIA wants to bring in people who find this compelling.
Right. And right. So if you were thought over the last few years, well, the intel agencies wouldn't try to screw a president like they did with Trump, right? That would never happen. Yeah, this is who's there. This is who lives in the Beltway.
Ideas of what a woman can or should be. I am tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for the space I occupy rather than intoxicate people with my effort, my brilliance. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to...
Go ahead, honey.
When I hear a younger person especially make declarative statements and then say full stop, I want to put the barrel of a 9mm into my mouth and blow my head off. Full stop.
Okay.
To expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA. I am unapologetically me. I want you to be unapologetically you, whoever you are. Know your worth. Command your space.
Man, the Chinese must be absolutely shaking in their boots.
Can the CIA please just work on CIA stuff? Is that too much to ask? But I was so blown away by this, especially given this year we've had all this woke military stuff that we've had about women in combat roles and all these things, and flight suits for pregnant women, and Tucker Carlson got in trouble for suggesting that maybe this isn't the best for our military readiness, and all the people in the military PR departments all jumped on him.
Yeah.
It's saying that we need diversity, equity, and inclusion in our military more than ever, and that's what makes us great or something. And so I was just thinking wow, so now the progressives have all of academia, which they've always had, all of Hollywood, which they've always had, plus now they have all the corporations, which have traditionally been the Republican thing, right? Plus now they have the military, plus now they have intelligence agencies. Plus, so I was looking at this story. CNN had a big piece today about how the Biden administration is apparently looking at partnering with private security firms to surveil suspected domestic terrorists online. So you know, you might be asking, like, okay, well, who's a suspected terrorist? So the picture on the CNN article is of the January 6th Capitol riot. In case you weren't sure who we're calling a domestic terrorist here, it's Trump supporters are the domestic terrorists.
Insurrectionists.
But this is actually the quote from the article. The Department of Homeland Security is limited in how it can monitor citizens online without justification, and is banned. They're banned from activities like assuming false identities to gain access to private messaging apps used by extremist groups like the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. Instead, the federal authorities can only browse through unprotected information on social media sites like Twitter and Facebook and other open online platforms. The plan being discussed inside the DHS, according to multiple sources, would in effect allow the department to circumvent these limits. A source familiar with the effort said it is not about decrypting data, but rather using outside entities who can legally access these private groups to gather large amounts of information that could help DHS identify key narratives as they emerge. By partnering with research firms who have more visibility in this space, that is, research firms that have more visibility in the space of assuming fake online identities to track you and figure out what you're saying when you think the government can't hear you, the DHS could produce information that would likely be beneficial to both it and the FBI, which can't monitor U.S. citizens in this way without first getting a warrant or having the pretext of an ongoing investigation.
Can it not?
The CIA,
Fool me.
the CIA and the NSA are also limited on collecting intelligence domestically. Oh, darn. I mean,
well,
like,
you
poor
know,
them. They're so...
We'll have to get the proud Latina intersectional CIA person to do enhanced interrogation on the Proud Boys.
Can you imagine they have to get warrants? And, like, or have an ongoing investigation before they spy on you?
We need workarounds here for the people in Antlers and their friends and people who also enjoy the same memes. And
that's totally unfair that they have to get warrants and stuff. Jeez. I mean, like, what are we playing at here? We need to get those domestic terrorists and get them now. Heaven forbid. So the intersectional cisgender millennials with generalized anxiety disorder need to be able to access your personal information.
Search has doubts about the voting process. You know, make sure any inputs for voter suppression in Georgia are taken out of that. Just find any complaining conservative who thinks that the voting by mail sucks, and put the screws to them. Throw them in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, and ruin them. And
great. So what we're watching now is literally the politicization of every important arm of the federal government.
As if but we're watching it done, codified legally.
Right.
This had already.
Oh yeah.
Joe Biden sat at the table with Obama and said, "All right, how do we screw Team Trump when he gets in here?"
Oh, and before that, and when they use the IRS and other government agencies to go after Tea Party groups who dared to form
right, that's just recently. And there have been problematic issues with the FBI forever. Certainly, if you're in Boston, another story of Whitey Bulger, it is local as well. I
had a dream, by the way, recently where whoever the powers that be cracked down on the Burn Barrel podcast, and we had to do it from like an RV that we were traveling the countryside on the run and do the Burn Barrel podcast on the run from our RV. So
God, have better dreams. Can't you be in the arms of a handsome man and get whisked away onto his unicorn or something?
I like my husband. That's my dream.
Why?
That I'm doing the Burn Barrel podcast.
No, dream about better looking men, Alice.
No, that's
terrible. Okay, before we go, and we got to get to softball. That was Jerry, the big Jerry Callahan, who just called. It left a voicemail, Alice, that consisted of 18 seconds of ripping me for going to softball. Like he knows I'm going tonight, and making the kids wear masks and wearing a mask myself, which unfortunately everybody's doing because nobody knows not to, and we're scared of getting yelled at. It's a long story. I'll be on Jerry tomorrow, by the way. That's Tuesday. Glenn Kessler, the guy who went after
who fact-checked how hard Tim Scott's grandfather really had it picking cotton in 3rd grade.
Exactly. So he has, and then went subsequently, after he got in hot water for it, went back in NPR giddy to explain that, he stands by all that stuff.
I also obtained property and other records that expanded on the information in the census, and those records are not in dispute. And those property records show how much land his great-grandfather purchased, and he appears to have been one of the biggest landowners, white or black, in Aiken County at the time. You know, by his account, he was raised largely by a single mother in poor circumstances.
By his account. But we dug into it.
And like I said, his story on the campaign trail is a bit too tidy for popular consumption. If I'd been able to talk to him, I would have, he was 10 or 11 when his great-grandfather died, so I was curious if he had ever visited this farm and what his impressions of it were. And in fact, I could only, for the great-great-grandfather, he says he had 900.
Imagine him creeping through the files. Let's see.
How many acres did he have?
How black were they really? What kind of experience did they have? Does he get to call himself black? Let me see what we've got here.
100 acres. I could only find records for about 170 acres, so I was wondering if that was a bit of family lore. And, he says his grandfather could not read or write, but the records indicate that his great-grandfather and his great-great-grandfather could read and write. So those were inconsistencies there, and maybe that's a little uncomfortable for him to talk about.
He is pretending to be black, and I'm getting there. I'm getting to the promised land of this story here. Soon I'll have it. We'll expose this guy who is running afoul of the progressive dictates of what you're allowed to believe if you're a black man, according to us, the white establishment.
Right. Hard to imagine any conspiracy theory more embarrassing than the Russia stuff that the Democrats have done nonstop for the last 5 years. But this conspiracy theory that Tim Scott's ancestors, who grew up in real Jim Crow, by the way, not Jim Eagle Jim Crow that we have now in Georgia, that somehow that their experiences in the real Jim Crow South were somehow not valid enough for him to really get any points. I mean, I say points because that's in their view, that he earns credibility points for being a black man who came from nothing. So they get to, examine how much credit they really have to give him for that. And this is really just mind-bogglingly humiliating that they're even doing this. It's so pathetic and terrible. In any case, this has been the Burn Barrel Podcast. He's Tom Shattuck. I'm Alice Shattuck, soon to be hosting a new and better podcast. You can find us for the moment at Burn Barrel Pod at Burn Barrel Pod on Twitter, at burnbarrelpodcast.com, facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast. We're also on Gab and Parler. We're at Burn Barrel Podcast on those platforms. We also have a YouTube channel, and you can email us burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com.